When a threat becomes reality, it wasn't fathomable that it could be worse than described. However, a 17-year-old girl survived the first attempt at murder, only to be brutally murdered moments later. Even with witnesses, this killer tried to claim that he had no idea what he was doing when he sat on his girlfriend until she suffocated. You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Makenna, and I am just so grateful that I came across this case and that I can tell you about Sammy and who she was as a person, what she went through, and just the pure horror that this girl had to face. So please, if you would like to, leave some sweet comments to her family or about Sammy down below as you learn about her. And I think that that would just mean the world to anybody who knew her who might come across this video. I also want to thank our sponsor, Love and Pies, which is a free-to-download Merge 2 mobile game, and you can also play it on your tablet as well. Love and Pies is a mix of a sitcom, a telenovela, and a cozy mystery as well. In the world of Appleton, you are Amelia, who goes to her hometown to find out that her mother is missing and that her mother's cafe has been burnt down. Through serving customers and rebuilding the cafe, you will collect clues, unlock secrets, and discover the truth. You can escape the real-life horror by putting your detective skills to the test in this very fictional world. So you can download with my link down below for free today and support this channel, as well as immersing yourself in something that you already know that you are interested in. So make sure to download Love and Pies down below. Now let's get back to the story. So it was 2012 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and 17-year-old Samantha Nicole Heller went by Sammy. She was a senior at the J.P. McCaskey High School, and she was born to Sandra McFalls and Keith Heller and had two brothers who were Joshua and Tyler, as well as a stepbrother named Austin. However, she was the youngest and the only girl. She had recently also become an aunt of two nieces. Now, Sammy was known to be this charismatic athlete. She would play softball, field hockey. She loved motorcycles and horses. Her mother called her a spitfire. She made life so much fun, and her friends said that she was a real comedian and a social butterfly with a big heart. She was actually planning on studying to be a veterinarian assistant after graduating, and Sammy had always been known to be very close with her family. She adored them. However, on December 4th of 2012, the Mannheim Police Department would be dispatched to Route 283 in Ralpho Township at around 2 a.m. There had allegedly been a horrific car crash of a black 1986 Toyota Celica, and it was believed to be traveling west when it crashed into a guardrail. Inside of the car was 17-year-old Sammy Heller and her boyfriend of 2 years, 19-year-old Benjamin Klinger. Sammy would not make it out that night alive. Now, the DA, Craig Stedman, said that at first glance it appeared to be simply another tragic vehicle accident. Yet first responders and paramedics would come upon this vehicle and they knew something was wrong. You see, the passengers were outside of the car, and Ben was on top of Sammy, who was lying face down in the road. He appeared to be sitting on top of Sammy's head and chest and her whole entire torso. However, officers were watching Ben seemingly slipping in and out of consciousness. He would close his eyes for several moments, he would moan and then open his eyes once again, yet the entire time he remained seated on top of Sammy. At first glance, many believed that Ben had been thrown on top of Sammy in the crash. At the crime scene, investigators would find cash, a digital scale, a pipe, marijuana, pills, and a black air pistol. Now, Sammy was DOA, and there was nothing the paramedics could do to bring her back. However, Benjamin was still alive, and he was rushed to the Hershey Medical Center. When Sammy's family was informed, they immediately knew this wasn't an accident. For the crash reconstruction, a sergeant named Christopher Keller was the first to work on the case as a reconstructionist. Now, he claimed that they always have to determine whether this was an accident, a vehicle default, or a purposeful act. However, in this case, what would lead them to the truth was the victim. You see, the entire passenger side of the car was damaged, and there was damage on the windshield, showing that Sammy had been ejected. Now, it was believed that Benjamin had been driving, Sammy had been in the passenger seat, and the car had been traveling around 114 miles per hour, and there were no signs of braking prior to traveling off the road, going about 450 feet before hitting a guardrail. It was believed that Sammy had been ejected from this car, though through this investigation, it revealed that Ben had not been ejected, and he did not somehow land on Sammy. He was wearing his seatbelt, and he remained seated. This made investigators believe that Ben must have gotten out of the car himself and gone over to Sammy after the crash. Now, a known individual to the couple would tell police that she went to visit Ben in the hospital when he was recovering, and she stated that he told her that they no longer had to worry about Sammy getting in between the two of them. It was unknown at this point the relationship between this witness and Benjamin, but we will get into that a little bit more in a bit. Now, Sammy's autopsy was performed by Dr. Wayne Ross, and he found that she died from multiple injuries and asphyxiation. Now, the cause of death was consistent with someone sitting on her. Medical records of Ben's hospital stay also would tell more about what could have happened, because it was concluded that Benjamin was never unconscious or going in and out of consciousness after the crash. It appeared as though he had been pretending. He did, however, have marijuana as well as prescription anxiety medication in his system during the time. Now, Benjamin was actually released from the hospital 2 days later, and a hospital employee would say that Benjamin had said, "I feel guilty. I told her she could lay down in the back seat without a seatbelt on, and she was pregnant with my child, and now she's dead." Forensic experts and investigators began to realize that this was far more complicated than they believed, and it was beginning to look sinister and certainly criminal. Now, when Benjamin actually was arrested at his home, he allegedly asked the police what had happened because he didn't remember the night of the crash. He wanted to know everything that they knew about the reconstruction of the crash, and police detective Vince claimed that Benjamin told him, "You guys think I'm guilty because of the way things look." A week later, though, a second autopsy of Sammy's body was performed. However, it's unknown why, and I don't believe anything's been released about that was any different than the first autopsy. But it turned out that the police had been dispatched to the scene from a 911 call that was made by a witness of the crash. A truck driver had came upon the crash, stopped, and immediately called for help, though he would tell the operator that he had seen a girl hanging outside of the passenger side window, and she had been screaming, "Get off of me." When he asked the operator if he could go and help, the operator told him not to go and move the victims because it could cause more injuries, to just leave them be, and he would confirm that the girl that he heard yelling was Sammy Heller. You can also hear her screaming on the 911 call.
Mr. County 911, do you need police, fire, ambulance?
I need both. There's a car on fire, Interstate 283. We got a car with injuries. Just past the Mount Joy exit. All right.
You said it's just the one car?
Yes.
Okay.
Sir, tell me what to do because this person is upside down.
Okay. We don't want to move them. Just try to keep them safe. How many people were in the car altogether? Two people.
Two.
Okay. Are they both awake?
No. The one's unconscious. The girl screamed, but she stopped.
Okay.
There's help coming. Sweetheart, stay still.
She had still been alive after this crash, and the truck driver claimed that he had witnessed the entire crash happen and saw no brake lights come on. Family and friends of Sammy knew quite a bit about her 2-year relationship with the boy that was 2 years older than her. They were said to be quite an on-again, off-again couple. However, when they were together, those who knew Sammy believed that she was being controlled by Ben and isolated from them. Most agreed that Sammy was a victim of psychological and physical abuse. Now, Police Chief Joseph Stauffer asked the public to call in if they knew anything about the relationship between Ben and Sammy, and one person stated that Ben had once pushed Sammy down a set of stairs and then pushed her into a wall during an argument. A friend of Sammy's named Paige said that she had once met Ben and that he had a very dark personality that gave her chills. She said she couldn't even look him in the eyes. Now, Sammy's aunt claimed that 11 months prior to this, she had been on the phone with Sammy when Sammy was in the car with Ben, And this aunt had heard Ben screaming at Sammy, "If you don't get off your phone with your effing relatives right now, I'm going to run this car right off the road, and then none of them are ever going to see either of us again." A friend of Sammy said she was once in the car with Sammy and Benjamin was driving and he started speeding, and when she asked him to slow down, Sammy said that that's how he normally drove. Now, the allegations against Ben and his behavior towards Sammy was actually documented in a criminal charge against Ben the same year of this accident in 2012. You see, he had a pending case of an assault charge against him by Sammy because Ben allegedly ran over Sammy's foot with the car. This was in May, about 6 months prior. He was also charged with 2 counts of sending and also receiving explicit sexual materials from a minor, and then he was allegedly showing them off to his friends as well, and this was of Sammy. She was still underage at that point. However, Benjamin, for all of those charges, had been released on bail after paying $27,500. Now, a few days prior to Sammy's death, witnesses had been told by Sammy herself that she believed that she was pregnant, and Benjamin was allegedly told this before the crash, not necessarily by Sammy, but he had learned about it. And so that is why he was thought to make the statement to the hospital staff saying that that's why she was in the back and that she was lying down. However, at this time, it wasn't revealed whether Benjamin was the father or that Sammy was actually pregnant at all. Now, Benjamin was taken to an arraignment hearing, and he allegedly asked the judge, "So I sat on her head?" Continuing with the narrative that he didn't remember that entire night, that he was going in and out of consciousness, even though the tests had proved that he hadn't been. Prosecutors believe that Benjamin had been intentionally speeding, and once he realized that Sammy was still alive and he failed to kill her the first time, he went over to sit on her and suffocate her. Benjamin was then charged with criminal homicide, and this was believed to be no accident. It was murder. Now, Benjamin's first lawyer was a man named Jeffrey Conrad, but after months of debating whether there was a conflict of interest, he withdrew from the case, and this was due to Jeffrey working with Ben during his prior pending cases. But prosecutors were also collecting evidence as well as witness statements, and they claimed to have found a note in Benjamin's car that showed that his motive would have been a list of demands from Sammy, including child support that Benjamin would have to pay. Prosecution had also allegedly found in Benjamin's phone that Sammy's name was saved under Dumb B. Heller. Prosecutors also claimed to have information about Sammy going to Planned Parenthood the day prior to the murder about her possible baby. However, she was allegedly never seen by a doctor when she went, and her autopsy revealed at that time that it did not find her pregnant at her time of death. Prosecution alleged that her murder was the final act in a cycle of abuse, and they were seeking a first-degree murder conviction. If the case went to trial, the jury was guaranteed to have to see all the photos of the horrific crash, and Judge Margaret Miller said that there is a difference between sad and tragic and inflammatory, and that she didn't find them to be inflammatory, so she could allow them in court. She claimed that the evidential value outweighed the possibility of being offensive to potential jurors, especially with the photos of Sammy being outside of the car and her position that could help the jury determine whether she was still alive after that car crash. Benjamin was then facing 9 other charges as well, including drug and vehicle violations. 2 years later, in 2014, Benjamin, who was 21 years old at that point, was headed to trial. However, he would take a plea deal and plead guilty to third-degree murder. He would confess and apologize to the court. He claimed that he took full responsibility for the loss of a very special person. He allegedly wept as he said this out loud, and he turned to Sammy's family and he said, "I want you to know with all my heart, I'm sorry. Really sorry." Though the judge Margaret Miller exclaimed that this is the first time she'd seen him show any degree of humanity or emotion, that he lived his life with callousness, arrogance, and cowardliness because being a bully is a coward. She said that he treated Sammy like an object, and that when that object became an inconvenience, the object was removed from his path. Sammy's mother, Sandy, then made a statement to the court and to Benjamin, and she said, "I want you to have nothing else to do in prison but think about how you took her life and destroyed ours." Sandy was actually asked prior to the plea deal if she would be okay with that being given, because that would guarantee that he would be locked up and unable to hurt any other women, and so that is why she accepted it. Now, without a trial, Benjamin Klinger was sentenced to 28 to 56 years in prison, and this is the first time that Lancaster County had a driver charged with homicide, as well as being the first motorist charged with non-vehicular homicide since 1995. Her mother said that Sammy and Benjamin's relationship started out well, that Sammy thought that he was very nice and loving. However, once she fell in love with him, he began to control her. And her mother explained that Sammy was getting very distant with her family as they got closer, and that she was skipping school, her behavior was changing. Her family even tried to separate the two, but that only made Sammy's love for Benjamin grow. And every time Ben would do something that, upset Sammy, he would always have this big apology that would make her take him back. Sammy had actually been thrown out of her family home due to all of this change occurring within her, and Sammy wanted to stay out late with Benjamin. She was always fighting with her mom about this, and Benjamin even would go over to try to talk to her mother to convince her to change her mind, to let Sammy do whatever he wanted. And it started to become dangerous when Sandy began to find things broken inside of her home, and she would later find out that Sammy had given Benjamin a key, and that he was sneaking in at night. Sandy would say that looking back now, kicking Sammy out was the worst decision she ever made. That Sammy had gone to live with Ben after this, everything escalated with his full control over her, and a lack of an escape. This is when Benjamin would run over Sammy's foot, and she was rushed to the hospital, and her mom got a call to go there. And this was the first time that Sandy was actually able to get through to Sammy that Ben was not good for her. And so after Sammy recovered from this, she moved in with her aunt. But unfortunately, Benjamin would not leave her alone. He would sit outside of her aunt's home until Sammy would talk to him. One night, Sammy gave in and she went to talk to Ben. And that night would be the same night that she would call her aunt in the car with Benjamin because he was threatening to kill both of them. That night, she did happen to talk him down from his rage, and she got back to her aunt's house. However, this shook her so much that she planned to never see him again and move back in with her mom. Sandy then took it into her own hands to get Benjamin locked away. She was the one who charged him with the sending inappropriate pictures to her underage daughter and sending those explicit photos to his friends. She was determined to get him labeled as a pedophile. For 6 months, everything went back to normal. Benjamin appeared to be leaving her alone, until Benjamin pressured her into signing a document that said that she wouldn't press charges against him. However, even though Sammy did sign this, she went to the police and she told them that he had coerced her into signing this, and she still wanted to press charges. Now, if you remember, there was a girl that had gone to the hospital while Benjamin was recovering from this crash that was talking about that Ben wanted to be together after this, and she actually turned out to be his new girlfriend. They had started dating once Sammy and Benjamin were on the break. This was yet another motive among the breakup, the charges, the possible pregnancy, and the new girlfriend. But mostly it was believed that Benjamin wanted control, that if he could not have her, no one could. The day her daughter died, Sandy knew that something was wrong. Sammy had said that she was going with a friend to spend the night, and all it took was one text from her saying, "I love you, Mama." These were the last words to her mother, and a few hours later, she was murdered. Her mother didn't get this message until the next morning and immediately told the police that Sammy had been murdered. However, 3 years later, in 2017, Benjamin requested to withdraw his guilty plea and go to trial instead. He argued that his attorney gave him bad advice, he didn't fully investigate other defenses, and his former attorney, who was Christopher Linden, was called to the stand due to these claims of not doing his job. So he outlined the entire process of preparing for the possible trial, including getting different witnesses, hiring experts, and Christopher said he warned Benjamin about going to trial because he knew that the abusive relationship with Sammy would be brought up, as well as the alleged threat, and he didn't think it was going to end up well for him. But Benjamin was testifying that he didn't understand the plea and he didn't know that he could get a different lawyer. However, he admitted that he not only told the court he understood the plea during that time, but also said he was satisfied with his lawyer. Judge Margaret Miller said that Benjamin's current displeasure with his sentence or hindsight regret of his decisions cannot change his voluntary plea of guilty. In 2018, Benjamin spoke with True Crime Daily from prison, and he is now claiming that Sammy's death wasn't a murder, that he still wants to go to trial and tell his story. He said the abuse that everyone talked about from him were only stories and lies made up by Sammy to get attention. He said the phone call that the aunt overheard where he was threatening Sammy was made up as well, that he would never say anything like that. He still continues to claim that he doesn't remember anything from the night of the accident or why he was out of the car. He didn't even know why she was in the car, and he said that he should have been driving better. He said he didn't kill Sammy with intent or with malice, that it was in fact an accident.
You can see in the pictures she was not afraid of me. She wasn't scared of the relationship. She loved attention. She loved getting sympathy from others. And she knew the best way to get attention and to get sympathy was tell stories. I would never want to take her away from her family. I would never hurt her. She had such a severe concussion. The doctor at the hospital told my family that, that they wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if I never remember anything. I did not realize that third degree was there's intent and there's malice. I was guilty of causing the death of Samantha from a car accident, but not in a malicious way that is murder. And it is terrible how she passed, but to try and say that it was an intentional act is not just a smear on me, but it's a smear on her legacy. At the end of the day, someone I really cared about passed away.
But Benjamin did claim that this was all a miscarriage of justice, which is unfair to her family and a smear of her legacy. Now, her family has since placed a cross at the scene of the crash. Sammy had survived that first attempt at murder, but tragically her abuser refused to let her live. Her family says that they are continuing to fight, and if he continues to fight to try to get out of prison, they will fight back because they are stronger now. They are no longer broken people. They have become these super strong individuals because of what he made them go through and how they dealt with it. These cases of domestic violence, of abuse escalating to murder, they always just hit me so hard that these people, her entire family was trying to get her away, and it's just such a difficult thing because the more you try to pull them away, the more they try to hold on to that person that isn't good for them. And it's just this super fine line. And, even at the point where she realized he was bad for her, she still couldn't get away. She just had to go through so much leading up to her murder. And then the actual murder is one of the most horrific I've ever heard. Please send her family so much love down below, and don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.